Given his background, a young African-American living in the inner city, both parents former cocaine addicts, it was statistically likely that Amari Yarbrough would end up homeless or in prison or die an early violent death. Fortunately, Amari Yarbrough defied those negative stereotypes and instead became a professional figure skater and author. He's from the US city of Baltimore and now 28, and our reporter Tricia Liverpool went to meet him and hear some extracts from his books.
We're at one of the largest ice skating rinks in Maryland, large enough for Amari Yarbrough to show me some of his favourite moves. With his casual clothes and diamond stud in his ear, there's nothing about the 28-year-old that says professional ice skater, but as soon as you see him glide on the ice, it becomes obvious that he's been doing it for years.
I first got my start in skating at the age of 9 when my best friend's mother took me to the ice rink and signed me up for group lessons. And it was one of those things that kind of happened by accident because I wasn't supposed to take any lessons. I was told by my mother not to take any lessons because it was too expensive, and she signed me up anyway. I started again after watching the '92 Olympics on TV when I was 13. And I decided that I really wanted to get back into it. It was just something about it. It's still a mystery to me what it was about it. But it was just something that was very exciting. It was different from what anyone else was doing in my neighborhood. And I took on a part-time job and I paid for it myself. My family was somewhat supportive. The only thing that really mattered to them, which I completely understand, was the cost. And coming from a large family, a family of, I have 5 other siblings and only one working parent in the household, the only thing they could see was the dollar signs. And this is a very, very expensive sport. Friends were kind of shocked, if anything, because I come from West Baltimore, from the inner city. And if you're not on the court playing ball, or if you're not playing football, you're on the streets hustling. So for me to say, I wanted to be a figure skater, and this being a predominantly white sport, and a sport that's also kind of has a stereotype and a stigma with being, very flamboyant, they found it quite interesting, but they were very supportive as well. 20 minutes of furious stretching later, I allowed the power of the light the chance to relieve my aching soul. My skates gobbled up the ice like someone eating a bowl of Captain Crunch. Not like the erratic and annoying crunching of a child, but rather the experienced, calculated crunches of an adult who'd spent years mastering the fine art of sound without noise. Stroking, gliding from end to end, I slid back and forth, swaying like a Florida palm tree in a balmy breeze. No tension, no pressure, no psychological provocation from outsiders. As the melodic sounds of Louis Armstrong played in the background, I thought to myself, "What a wonderful world." What a wonderful world.
Amari toured across America for 3 years with the first Black Ice Show, a production called Ebony on Ice. But it wasn't the thrill of the sport or the enjoyment of being on the ice that kept Amari coming back to the rink. It was the only way for him to escape his home life. He found out his parents were addicted to cocaine when he was just 9 years old.
There was so much, silent anger that I had inside of me, as well as frustration. And when I went to the rink, it was just like I'm doing something that none of my other peers can do. And that in itself was like a tremendous feeling of extreme happiness and just overjoy. Being on the ice was therapeutic. It was therapy that I needed, and that really brought me out of a negative space during that time period in my life. I think it was far back as the age of 9 when I first noticed that there was something different about my mom and dad. And by the age of 10, I knew what was going on, but I was in denial of it. And when it finally did come out, I'd lived in denial for so long, it hit me pretty hard. Some of the worst times were, for example, us having our water cut off in the middle of the summertime, or the gas cut off during the wintertime, and having to live, sometimes days or even months without these amenities that so many people take for granted. I tried to make my parents stop by, I would try to take an interest in what they were doing, asking could I attend their meetings, encouraging them to come out and see me skate, anything that would kind of divert their attention from what was going on. I really got things got really scary for me when payday came around for my parents. I knew every time they got paid, and I was just like at the door waiting for them. Sometimes, I would want to hold their money for them so they wouldn't spend it all. I have four younger sisters and an older brother, and my mom wanted all of us to leave and go stay with our grandparents that lived on the outskirts of Baltimore, Maryland. And when she left, she took my sisters with her. My brother and I refused to go. We decided to stay with my father. And I stayed with my father for a couple of years until eventually I couldn't take it anymore. And then I eventually ended up leaving and going to stay with her. His addiction it gradually got worse. It got worse and worse, and it got to the point where the electricity was cut off for the last time, and I said that this is it. I can't continue to live like this. They decided to turn their life around when they both hit rock bottom. They both got to a point in their lives where they were like, we can't take it anymore. My mom had gotten herself clean before my dad, a couple years before my dad did. That was her leaving the house, her removing herself from that city environment and going to the suburbs where she was away from everything. My dad, it took him a couple more years, and there was one night where, he told me he had OD'd, and that's when he realized that he needs to do something better. He needs to make a change.
It could have been easy for Amari to start experimenting with drugs or even sell them. At one point, he considered it. But instead, he chose to use his experiences to show others that there is another way.
I did some writing in college. I was an English writing major. And coming out of college, a year later, I decided to write a nonfiction book, a self-help book, that was going to be the story of my mom and dad and the unconventional way that they came off of drugs. It was going to be a self-help book for those that were struggling and battling with drug addiction. My mom made me change to fiction. And in the process of interviewing her one day, she said to me, why don't you just tell your own story? Tell your own story in your own words from your point of view. Acceptance. Something I'd never owned but realized that sooner or later I'd have to at least rent. Yes, it's true my parents are junkies. Yes, it's true we are no longer a family. Yes, it's true my brother hates me. And maybe, just maybe, I'm fighting a battle with a demon as invisible as the wind. It's a fight that no matter how hard I swing, duck, dodge, dip, and roll, I'll still probably never win. The demon of acceptance has the power to lift you off your feet, suspend you in air, twirl you till you're dizzy, and then drop you. For the longest, I felt like I was in the suspension stages, powerless, my feet dangling in midair, and it was time for me to grab hold of the first light post, church steeple, or chimney I could get my hands on in order to climb down to the ground. A lot of publishers rejected the book because it wasn't street enough. There's a big trend with black writers in America where they want street, they want ghetto, they want thug, they want glamorized sex, and that's not the type of book that I was writing. It feels good to go against the expectations and the stereotypes, and I remember as a kid always being told that I probably wouldn't live past the age of 21. And this is what a lot of young black men in the city grow up hearing. And so that creates a dark cloud around a lot of us, and we feel, well, what's the point of me even going to school or continuing to follow sports? And that hurt me a lot. It did, but again, someone also told me I wouldn't be able to skate.
Amari Yarbrough, skater and writer, was talking to Tricia Liverpool. Outlook will be back same time tomorrow here on the BBC World Service.